Hello, football fans. Welcome to what is the second to last podcast we're going to host this year. I can't say the words because I'm superstitious, and also there's rules against using it to promote your shit, so can't say the words. But you know what podcast it is. This is Noah. I'm Ted, here to cover conference championship round, previews for the next round. I want to tell you this is short because we've only got like 2 games and then a matchup to talk about, but I got so much shit to say. Same with the past couple of weeks. We're just going to jump right in, move chronological order. First off, the Eagles 49ers. What the hell? I want to start with the 49ers for a handful of reasons. The first, obviously, is Brock Purdy's injury. Poor guy. Like that sucks. Getting the whole way there and not being able to play in the conference championship game. Broke a 12-game win streak. Like that hurts for Brock Purdy. I hope for the best for him. They bring in Josh Johnson, who's playing. I didn't realize he's been in the league for 17 years with 13 different teams. This is his 3rd time on the 49ers. No idea. On a very similar play, dude gets injured like the exact same way that Purdy got injured. So again, that sucks because realistically, you have to imagine that's the end of his career after jumping to so many teams for so long. Like, that sucks. But it also leaves the 49ers in a very winnable game that they have no options. They were going to put McCaffrey in at quarterback, but I don't think that's a sustainable, winnable game at that point. They put Purdy back in for the threat of, well, at least he's a quarterback, but he couldn't throw. I mean, he threw the ball once or twice maybe after he came back from his injury, and I think air yards was grand total of 3. It became very evident that they weren't able to throw the ball. Their offense stopped working. I feel really terrible for the 49ers. As lovely as I think it is for the Eagles to be in the big game, I really didn't want it to happen this way. I wanted it to be good football, and I wanted the 49ers to be in a much better circumstance to be an opponent than they were.
Right. Again, we talked about, strength test. I think the Niners would have been a really good strength test had they been at full strength, So, seeing the Niners, again, after all the injuries, after getting slowed down enough where they just didn't have a quarterback anymore. The team just kind of fell apart. It's unfortunate. Again, I was looking forward to a really good game. And I had picked the Niners to win, but had I known all these injuries, I think I would have gone with the Eagles.
Absolutely. I do kind of want to talk about the Eagles for the first half, though, because I feel like, at least for the first half of this game, when the 49ers still had a quarterback, that I think this game was a lot more telling than the score indicated. I've been saying it here for weeks that one of the ways that you win championships is by having a really good front defensive 4, getting to the quarterback and being able to drop 7 back in coverage. And I think the Eagles did a pretty good job at that. I hate to say that the 2 best examples are getting to the quarterback that injured the quarterback, but on both plays, there's very few guys rushing the quarterback. They still managed to get there. I think Reddick had 3 sacks. Their front defensive 4 was really good. Their secondary played really well. I think their defense stood up for at least the amount of time that it was a fair and reasonable game. On offense, the Eagles struggled a lot. Even in the second half, there were quite a few times where they would get a 3rd and long, not convert, and then the 49ers would give them the first down via penalty. There were a lot of times that they definitely did not deserve to have first downs, long drives. They really struggled on offense. And while they got the job done at the end of the day, I think they needed a lot of assists to get through a defense as tough as the 49ers.
Yeah. Again, I think it was, you look at the first half, it was still, 7-7 just after a few minutes in the, second quarter. And then, again, the second part of and then the second half in general, again, with no quarterback, kind of just sucked. But again, I expected more from the Eagles after all of these. The Niners defense was still kind of what we expected from the Niners defense, even though they allowed a lot of points and their rush defense was interesting.
I mean, I feel like I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I feel like they gave up almost as many penalty yards as the Eagles had passing yards all day, and that's just a really tough way to leave points off the board. I mean, I think had you avoided all of their third down penalties, the Eagles, the Eagles maybe scored 14. Like it was a much closer game than I think the scoreboard allowed for. I I think the 49ers could have stayed in it better with a healthy quarterback. I again, really sucks for them to be in that situation. I genuinely don't feel good for the Eagles winning this game, but I think it does put in perspective that like even against a really good defense, the Eagles were able to generate something. Um, I won't say that their offense played badly. They were continuing to generate. Just they put themselves in a lot of third and long situations that would have ended the drive early. But I mean, the 49ers are the best defense in the league, and I think the Eagles will match up a whole lot better, in their next game than they would have had the 49ers offense been able to keep up with how well their defense was playing.
Yeah, agreed.
As for the AFC game, this game started really boring and then got really interesting. We've seen it, 3 times now, where Burrow always beats the Chiefs by a field goal at the last second of the game, just always wins an Arrowhead. Mahomes can't beat him. But it was a weird turn of events to see basically the exact same thing play out, but in the reverse direction, and the Chiefs win by a field goal kicked in the last second. What was interesting for me is that I guess neither one of these teams really had offensive explosion. Noah and I had been messaging a little bit throughout this game that it really felt like Burrow wasn't having connections with his receivers, just couldn't find the timing, couldn't find the open guy, having trouble staying in the pocket and generating something. What's his name? The defensive lineman for the Chiefs who had a few sacks in this game, he was in the backfield almost as much as Burrow was. Like the same idea as the Eagles earlier, where they rushed with 4 and they consistently got into the pocket. But I will say that there were a lot of pieces of evidence that like maybe Mahomes isn't 100%, and it's going to be hard to rely on him against a better defense than the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I thought originally going into the game, we had seen from the reports and everything, I think it was made to be like his ankle was a lot better than what we saw. I don't think we saw a full 100% Patrick Mahomes. I didn't expect to see a fully healthy Mahomes, but I think I expected closer to like 80-90%. And I think at some moments there were definitely times where he definitely was favoring his other leg. So I mean, it was interesting, and I think that I guess we'll see maybe with the extra week from the Pro Bowl he'll have enough time, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm interested because like I think we saw it a few times where like he made bad passes that weren't able to generate a whole lot in times that I guess we would normally see Mahomes roll out of the pocket or step forward in the pocket and uses his legs to give his receivers time. I didn't think we saw as much production out of Travis Kelce as we should have, because Kelsey's really great on those just run loose routes. There were a bunch of times that I watched Mahomes either like land on one leg after jumping or avoid contact with his back leg to make sure that like he wasn't going to re-injure anything. We never really saw him roll out or run any bootlegs, that kind of thing. Credit to Andy Reid for being able to call plays around his injured quarterback and still have a productive offense. But I mean, I think it was pretty noticeable, and I think it's going to be a lot harder to do that against the Eagles defense than it is against the Bengals.
Right.
So I guess that brings us up into forecasts for this game. I don't really know where to start here, because I think we've watched both teams struggle. I think they're going to match up interestingly, but I guess I just don't really know what to expect. The Chiefs, for what feels like 50 years now, although it's probably closer to 5, have just been explosive offense, just all offense all the time, never stop producing on offense. And especially through this playoff run, I guess we haven't seen that same sort of explosion. To contrast that, the Eagles' defense has been one of their like strong points all season long, and their defense looks really good. Like I don't know that we get to see the Chiefs' biggest points of success. However, in years past, we've also seen the Chiefs' defense be kind of a liability where they don't have to be good. They just have to let up less than their offense can score. But their defense actually looks really stout. The secondary, especially for the past 3 weeks, has been playing ridiculously well. Their front four is doing a really great job at getting to the quarterback. The Eagles have struggled against tighter defenses, much like the 49ers this past week. I guess we could just see this game go a whole lot of different directions, and I don't know what's most realistic.
Yeah, I think we discussed, what would be like the worst outcome, right? That we wanted would be the Eagles Chiefs. I mean, I still kind of stand by that. Again, I think it's going to be a slow grit and grind, and I didn't want to see that first Super Bowl. Again, like I think, especially with Mahomes still injured, we're not going to see those big explosive plays as much. The Eagles, I mean, the Chiefs defense is doing really well, but again, they're not, I don't think, on the same level as like the Niners defense. So we'll kind of see how big of a gap that their defense are. But again, I'm expecting this one to be kind of boring.
I'm kind of with you. I don't know that we're going to get a super watchable game. Like, I remember, God, it's been so long now, but the game against the Bears and the Colts, opening kickoff, Devin Hester took it back for a touchdown. Like, that game was explosive start to finish. Even its boring parts felt really entertaining, right? And I think here we're just going to get a really grindy game where they're just going to be fighting for yards. Like, I think this is going to feel much more like regular season week 6 than it is going to be, the championship, like the biggest game of the season. I guess it's going to depend on like how strong both of these defenses are. I think Patrick Mahomes has the ability to explode even if he were playing with literally one leg, not just, one good leg and one kind of not all right leg, right? I think the Eagles have shown all season long that they can make explosive plays either through the air or on the ground, but it's not always consistent all season long. I think this game has the ability to show us some fireworks, but it's hard for me to expect it.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. I think, if we see 100% healthy, on both sides of the ball, like we have an amazing game, but I feel like we're just not going to get that.
I'm also interested in the officiating because I think we saw lots of comments about the referees from the previous 2 games.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
Well,
apparently she heard something you said.
I was gonna say I'm glad she doesn't agree. It's great discourse for the pod. But so like I mentioned, the Eagles relied a lot. I shouldn't say relied on, but they were opportunistic in the fact that there were lots of 3rd and longs that they got to convert because of dumb penalties that the 49ers committed. I'm not sure that we've seen the Chiefs have such a lack of discipline that they'll be able to count on those moving forward. Alternatively, we saw the Chiefs have a couple of extra chances just because of weird officiating that happened in their game. The one I'm distinctly thinking of ended up turning into a punt, but on a 3rd down play, they failed to convert. But apparently there were whistles that had stopped the play that nobody heard, and they got to redo 3rd down and try again. Again, it ended up being inconsequential, but there were a handful of things in that moment that, like, officiating made both of these games seem abnormal. I don't want to, ever accuse officiating of not doing their job because they know the rules better than me. They can spot things a whole lot better than I can from a level that's much harder to see it from. But I guess it's going to be interesting that like both teams being here was somewhat affected by referees and not knowing what you're going to get to face each other this week with a new set of refs.
I guess we'll see and we'll find out.
Yeah, I think it's pretty notable. I do, before we get out of here, I just want to touch on some other NFL news. Actually, let me back up half a step because before I move on, we do have to talk about the spread. Admittedly, not knowing what's most realistic for this game, I think this line is pretty fair. But FanDuel has set the line. Eagles are 1.5 favorites. Technically, they're the home team, but in this game, it really only means who gets to call the coin flip. So. I think the Chiefs have more upside and their defense has been playing better than the Eagles. So I think I'm going to take the Chiefs and the points. But I mean, just to be realistic, this game, I think it's pretty evenly matched. Both teams can have significantly better or significantly worse days that it could go either way. But if I had to put money on it, I think I'm taking the Chiefs.
I'm actually gonna go Eagles here. I think it's gonna be more of the grit and grind. I think the Eagles are more prepared for that, and I think that's how it's gonna end up being. So yeah.
I will say for me, I think that if the Chiefs can properly use Jerick McKinnon, I think they're the better team. Like, I think if they can mix off their play calling to get McKinnon involved, I think the Chiefs are the better team. But moving on from that, now we've got other NFL news. Just a handful of things that came up. The first thing we were talking before the pod, so it would, be shameful to not bring it up here. I want to talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl. So they don't have a full game anymore, right? I mean, the game was already kind of cheese, but now they've replaced it with a flag football game. We've got concerns about rosters, about backup picks, guys not showing up. One of the things that I had mentioned before we started recording was that, like, in college, there have been guys over the past few seasons that have elected not to play their bowl games at the end of the season. And I kind of understand that to a point, because while it's maybe your only playoff game in college, you also, you're about to get drafted, right? Your resume is already on the table, in that one bowl game that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot other than bragging rights could potentially injure you and harm your draft status, right? Your ability to go and play at the next level. I don't get that for the NFL. We've watched Burrow say no. We've watched Josh Allen say no. Neither with injuries that are of note to either of us. That, I could almost understand not wanting to be injured if it was a real football game, but the football game's kind of cheese. And now it's flag football with minimal to no contact. I don't understand not wanting to just spend a week in Hawaii to play some fun, goofy football, man.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. I think it's just, in general, I don't even care about the Pro Bowl anymore, because it's not a game. It's been a terrible game recently. But again, I don't know how you could go from poor to worse. I don't think this is the answer. And the series of mini games they're going to be doing eventually, I don't think that's right.
I will argue that one a little bit, because I don't know if you're an NBA fan, but if you watch the NBA, their All-Star weekend, nobody watches the All-Star game. Nobody watches the All-Star game. Everybody loves the 3-point contest and the dunk contest, and that's just it, right? I think dodgeball's fun to watch. I don't necessarily care that they're it's just some random Joe Schmoes in a gym versus NFL players. Dodgeball's just kind of cool. That being said, I'm gonna forget that the Pro Bowl's on and not watch it, but I think it's a step up from just a game that I didn't care about. My whole thing is from the player's perspective, if you're Josh Allen, you don't have anything left this season, why not just get an all expenses paid trip to Hawaii to throw dodgeballs at other guys and joke around with some dudes that aren't your teammates, right? I don't see the concept of saying no.
I don't know.
I also think it waters down the product a little bit, that I think the Pro Bowl could get better and better every year if the best talent was there. But there's a lot of issues with that, right? The NFC had 9 Eagles going to it, right? And now they don't get to play because they're not Pro Bowl eligible. They're going to the big game the week after. So now you have to replace 9 guys on the roster. And then the rest of the top talent is saying no. And then you end up getting guys like Tyler Huntley, who's cheesing like an idiot, who was the backup all season long for an injured Lamar Jackson, who probably also said no. I think it just kind of... I think it just kind of waters down the product a little bit. I think, if you're a dude like Tyler Huntley, congrats to you. You get to go. You get to say now that you're a Pro Bowler, but, I mean, it can't mean that much, at this point, because all of these guys are saying no.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I agree. In general, I think just being... I feel like the game is just super watered down for the Pro Bowl. Again, now being to flag football, I feel like there's less pride in that. Again, but while it might still be fun, if you're Tyler Huntley, sure. I really don't understand how he made it. I really can't understand it. He threw 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in 5 games, and here we are at a Pro Bowl. So I just can't. I can't. It's so diluted now. Yes.
I don't know. I hope the skills competitions are fun. Like, I hope they give me a reason to watch next year. But it's just weird to know that, like, there are 8 to 10 other guys who are probably more deserving of this spot than Tyler Huntley, who, like you said, played 5 games with 2 touchdowns and 3 picks. Like, I don't know. I would, as weird as it sounds that I just said, it doesn't matter if it's a gym full of schmucks or, NFL Pro Bowlers that are throwing dodgeballs at each other. Like, you can't tell me more people are going to tune in for Tyler Huntley than they would for Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. Anyway, I'll get off that soapbox. The bigger news story that happened actually just earlier today, Tom Brady again announced his retirement. I, for one, don't buy it. I cannot buy in. First off, it's the same day as it was last year, and it was just as disingenuous. Last year was a couple Instagram posts and a newspaper article to only Bucks fans. We obviously know that, like, there was all that tampering stuff that went with the Dolphins, Brady and Sean Payton to, let him be co-owner of Miami, then just kind of like buy his release from the Bucks so that they could sign him. He'd be an owner and a quarterback for the Dolphins, right? Like, we know all of that was in the works. That's why the Dolphins are losing their first round pick. So that one was genuinely disingenuous. He had no plans to fully quit from football. Now it was just a Twitter post. It was 45 seconds long. The guy is smiling the entire time with like the smallest glint of any emotion other than just like, I'm a mannequin who smiles all the time. And it was just, I have so many people to thank. I'd like to thank the fans and my coaches and my teammates and my competitors. And all right, well, that's it. The list would go too long. Thanks, everyone. And just ends the post, right? Like, it felt so robotic and inhuman. And I hate to bring up the dude's personal life, but like, if he's going through some shit, how better to go through some shit than continuing to do the thing that probably cost that for you to at least some extent, right? Like, it would be so hard for me to believe that he's not going to be on a sideline somewhere next season doing something.
I don't know. I'm just here.
Yeah, I get it, man. Like, I'm not asking for the dude to be back on a roster next season. I'm ready for the dude to retire. He could be a Hall of Famer 3 times with 3 separate careers. Like, his 20s, his 30s, and his 40s are all Hall of Fame worthy. I get it, but also, like, it just, I guess the way that it happened, man, I can't buy into that. I can't until week 1 starts and he's not playing. I can't believe it.
I don't know. I think at a certain level, I think this past season was kind of like him trying to see after, all the off-season stuff that happened, in his family and such. And I think he didn't find the answer. And I think he's like ready to move on. I think he was ready, but then he came back to try to find an outlet or something. And then he's done now, though.
I'm going to be so frustrated if this is just a leverage play. Like, I think part of the retirement last season was to get Bruce Arians gone. That's just reckless speculation on my part. Like, I don't have any evidence of that whatsoever, right? But like, I think I would be interested that if this turns into a leverage play again, we watch somebody at the Bucks get fired or quit or traded or whatever the hell, and then Brady's like, oh, well, actually, I do want to play again, and then he comes back. Or if some team's going to sweeten the pot by signing a receiver that he wants to get along with. Like, maybe it's just waiting to see what kind of money's on the table for a dude like, Aaron Rodgers. Like, maybe it's seeing like, oh, well, if he signs an extension or opts out and signs somewhere else, like, maybe I can make this much money. Like, I don't know what the play is here. Like, but I have to be skeptical until I can be sure that he's not coming back. I can't buy in.
I guess we'll just find out.
Yeah. Well, if it's anything like last year, we're only going to have to wait like a month and a half. So, anyway, I think that wraps us up for this week. Like I said, there's just not a whole lot of material to talk left about, but I am excited to watch the game. Next week, there will be no podcast solely because I'm not going to sit here and break down the Pro Bowl for the 3 minutes of it I did watch as clips on, ESPN's TikTok. There will be one after the big game, just to cover whatever happened, but I imagine that one's going to be pretty short. We'll maybe get into some off-season stuff if we're really feeling like we're starving for content. But otherwise, I mean, for big meaty content pieces, this is going to be our last big one of the year. So with that, I guess we'll wrap up, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.